This is a math lesson out of your 4th grade Chapter 10 GoMath Workbook, Lessons 10.1 and 10.2. It is somewhat of an abbreviated version, but they go really well together, so I think it's okay. Let's get started. We are on page 549. 549. The first thing we have here is some vocabulary. This vocabulary is new to my students, so let's go ahead and get started. A point, what you see here, is an exact location in space. This is one point, usually on some sort of a line. Let's talk about that. A line is a straight path of points that continues without end in both directions. What that means is this end goes on and on and on because it has the arrow, and this end goes on and on and on because it has an arrow. This line is called line BC or line CB. You can name these lines whatever you want them to be. And it's labeled like this with a little line with arrows at the top with a B and a C. The next new vocabulary word is called line segment. A line segment is part of a line. Think about what the word segment means. A line segment is part of a line between two endpoints. So here's your one endpoint. Here's your other endpoint. Therefore, you have line segment DE or line segment ED. And then we have a ray, not to be confused with the word array that we would use in multiplication. This is a ray. It's a ray, okay? And so a ray is a part of a line that has one endpoint and continues without end in one direction. So it starts here and it goes on and on and on that way. You would write this as ray FG. The ray, you always start with the endpoint letter first and the G. It's the only one that has like kind of an order that it matters. These are the 4 new words that we haven't really talked about as 4th graders yet in our GoMath series. Next, on page 550, you have some angles. We've talked briefly about angles in the past, but an angle is formed by 2 rays or line segments that have the same endpoint. The shared endpoint is called a vertex. So when you have an angle, you have 2 lines that come to, now notice, these 2 line segments do not come together. These are not, this is not an angle. An angle has to have the 2 line segments coming together at the same endpoint, which we would then call a vertex. And then you have, you can make this a line or line segments or whatever you want. This is an angle. An angle is formed by 2 rays or line segments that have the same endpoint. The shared endpoint is called a vertex. So if we're going to label these the same as are labeled in your GoMath workbook, we now have an angle. We have angle PQR or angle RQP or angle Q. And this is going to be written like this. Angle PQR, angle RQP, or angle Q. And so all of these things mean the same thing. You can label these however you choose, one of these 3 ways. This is an acute angle. I tell my students, a cute little angle, it's so cute. An acute angle is an angle that has less than a right angle. So it is smaller than our right angle. The angle itself is smaller. This is an acute angle. This is an acute little angle, okay? The next angle that we have is a right angle. What you'll notice is special about the right angle here is that it has this box. All right angles always have a box. If it looks like a right angle, but it doesn't have a box, it's an imposter. It's not. It's always going to have a box in the 4th grade. They're not going to ask you to figure that out. If you're in the 4th grade, it's going to have a box in lessons 10.1 and 10.2. It's called a right angle. The box here is the dead giveaway. Angle HBQ is a right angle. The next kind of angle we have is an obtuse angle. An obtuse angle is larger than a right angle. Its angle, its lines meet together in a way that is greater than a right angle. Whoopsie. A right angle is 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is greater than 90. So the angle KLM we would call an obtuse angle. And finally, we have a straight angle. A straight angle is a line, essentially, with 3 points on it. So our straight angle here is angle HIJ or JIH or angle I, and it's a straight angle. It's just a straight line. These are the 4 types of angles that you know that you will be learning in 4th grade, that you just learned in 4th grade. These are the 4 types of angles these are the ways that we classify angles by the size of the opening between the rays. So however large the opening is, that determines what type of angle it is. If it is 90 degrees, if it's straight up and straight across perpendicular lines, then it's a right angle. If it's less than 90 degrees, smaller, the opening does not create perpendicular lines, they're closer together, that's an acute angle. If your angle does not create perpendicular lines and it's larger than 90 degrees, that's an obtuse angle. And of course, if it's straight, it's straight. Those are the 4 different types of angles. So that concludes lesson 10.1. We learned definitions, a point, a line segment, a ray. We learned about angles. And the activities in lesson 10.1 simply give you practice in naming those things and showing you how to do that. Let's flip to lesson 10.2, page 555. Now, we've talked about angles, we've talked about line segments and rays and things like that. Now we are going to do the same kind of thing. We're going to learn how to name triangles and how to classify triangles. So here's the triangle we have on page number 550. Find triangle ABC. You can name this in a lot of different ways. You can name it triangle ABC, triangle BCA, triangle CAB, triangle ACB, triangle BAC, triangle CBA. You can name your triangle any of these things. They're all the same. This is 6 different possible names for the same triangle. All these things go with this triangle, and you can see that clearly in the box at the top of page 555. So now, how can we classify triangles by the size of their angles? That is what we are doing here today. We are classifying triangles by the size of their angles. So, we have acute triangles. An acute triangle is a triangle that has 3 acute angles. All of the angles in an acute triangle are smaller than 90 degrees. And so it's called an acute triangle. We have an obtuse triangle. I'm right at the top of page 556. And the obtuse triangle has 1 obtuse angle, which is larger than 90 degrees. And then it has 2 little acute angles, but the obtuse angle is what gives it away right there. And then finally, we have a right angle. A right angle is a triangle with 1 right angle. What do you notice in my triangle that's missing in my right triangle? That little box that notates that it's a right angle. If it doesn't have that little box that tells you it's a right angle, then it's not a right angle. On page 566, you can use some practice. You can use some time to practice and write the names of triangles inside the Venn diagram. I'll tell you, if you look at those triangles in that box, there are 2 right triangles. You will see that with the little blue boxes. Then there are 3 acute triangles and 3 obtuse triangles. And again, lesson 10.2, they're just giving you, on these pages of practice, they're just giving you more opportunity to practice and understand and learn and just get more acquainted with these types of triangles. So that concludes our review of your GoMath Chapter 4 workbook. No, GoMath Grade 4 workbook, Chapter 10, Lessons 1 and 2.